Hey there, everybody, and how are you guys doing tonight? This is Mobile Cup of Joe's What's Brewing, our weekly on-air live show, streaming right now on Google Plus and on our YouTube channel. So this is kind of a bittersweet show. This is our last show for 2014. But we do have a lot of awesome stuff planned for you guys tonight. We still have our freshly brewed news as always, and we do have an espresso shot, but this time by Spec Sheet Tony. I'm talking about a very awesome product that I know I'm interested in quite a bit. But along with that, we are also taking a look back at 2014, looking and seeing what 2014 brought to us in the world of technology, but also looking forward and being a little optimistic as to what 2015 will bring. So today we do have the normal set of guests. We've got Back from the Dead Fred, Ones and Zeros Chuck, and Spec Sheet Tony. Unfortunately, the bearded barista Alvy has gone once again on his wonderful cruise, so leaving us in this kind of gloomy weather, at least here in Michigan, while he is off enjoying the wonderful sun and surf and all that good stuff. But today we do have a special guest, Aaron Traffas, joining us once again. He's been on the show one time before, so awesome to have him here. So Aaron, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, just for those of you who haven't seen you before.
Sure. My name's Aaron. I'm a community evangelist for a company called Purple Wave. We're an internet auction firm, and we sell equipment and vehicles, combines and dozers and backhoes and big heavy things, tires and turbos, and also a big technology enthusiast. So I'm certainly happy to join today.
And we're definitely excited to have you on here with us as well. So that's our show. Don't forget, if you got any questions throughout the time of the show, the Q&A is open, so go ahead and leave us a question down in there anytime throughout the show, and we will be sure to get back to you with an answer live on air. But if you're watching the show later in the week or later in the day, go ahead and use the hashtag MCOJBrew. That's on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, all the socials. Go ahead and leave us a question or a comment there, and if you do, use the hashtag. We will be able to get back and respond to that on a future show. So let's go ahead and get right into it for the last show of 2014 for What's Brewing. We got some freshly brewed news, and looks like we've got a couple OnePlus stories to kind of kick us off with and get started with. So Chuck and Fred, what is brewing with that?
Well, I'll go with what's probably my top story for the week, and that is the once again OnePlus and CyanogenMod in the headlines for their debacle of how they do business. And what I mean by that is, as some of you guys, well, I'm sure most of the people who watch this know, CyanogenMod formed their company. They were the OS behind OnePlus here in the U.S., and I believe it was supposed to be globally. Well, then apparently they found out that OnePlus, was supposed to release their phone in India, and presumably it was going to have CyanogenMod like the rest of the world. But then there was a little curveball thrown in that I believe it was Micromax now has the exclusive to CyanogenMod in India. So OnePlus was kind of kicked to the curb, and from what we've seen this week, it looks like OnePlus had no idea this was coming. CyanogenMod has kind of gone back and forth. We're committed to our users. They said, yeah, we'll provide CyanogenMod for the OnePlus, but come to find out it's only the global edition of the OnePlus. It's not the India-specific OnePlus. So it's just been a gigantic debacle. There's been lawsuits filed. Micromax filed a lawsuit injunction against OnePlus so that they are now the exclusive Cyanogen provider, I guess, for lack of a better term, in India. We've gotten some really interesting dirt as far as emails go, back and forth between OnePlus and CyanogenMod's CEO. On this and that and the other thing, and I think the most interesting email that we saw was more or less the equivalent of you breaking up with your boyfriend or girlfriend over a text message. That's kind of what the CEO did with OnePlus. It was kind of an email of, no, we're done, we're terminating you. We don't need to meet with you. We'll maybe talk some other time later. Which is kind of, I'm blown away that someone in this day and age would even do business that way. Now, we're only going based on what we know, which is from the actual, documents that were filed in court itself. So, could something else have happened? Potentially, possibly. But I do kind of find it interesting how this entire thing went about, and it kind of seems on par for the course with OnePlus and CyanogenMod with some of the business decisions they've made so far. And I think kind of the crowning glory was the signature on a couple of the emails from the CEO of CyanogenMod that said "sent from my iPad," which is hilarious. And look, I got nothing against using other devices, but if your company, the only thing your company does is produce an Android phone, you would think you'd probably use an Android tablet. But yeah, what do I know? So I don't know. What's everyone else?
If you get a text message or an email from the CEO of T-Mobile, you don't expect to say it sent from my 4G LTE Verizon wireless phone.
Well,
That's exactly what we're seeing here.
So, what are you guys' thoughts on this? I mean, my opinion is it's a gigantic debacle. It just, I've said this all along. At some point in time, CyanogenMod has to start making money. You can't just have, fairy dust the entire time and hope to run a business. You have to make money. They have raised quite a bit of money to keep their funding going forward. And, when people give you money, they expect double that money in return, and they expect it pretty quickly. So I think what you're seeing here is CyanogenMod realizing that, hey, we've actually got to start making money somehow, and the highest bidder right now is winning.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead. You start us off.
I'd say I don't agree with all with the way they ended the relationship, or supposedly ended the relationship with CyanogenMod, but like Chuck was saying too, it does make sense why they would do this, because Micromax has been around for quite a while longer than OnePlus, which OnePlus just had their 1-year anniversary this past week. So OnePlus as a company, they're not making money right now. They're selling the OnePlus One for $299. Then they've got that 10,000 milliamp hour power bank that they announced selling for, what is it, like $15. So with those kind of products, they're not making money. Granted, you're not spending a lot on their advertising, but still, they can't be that profitable of a company right now. So for Cyanogen Inc. to say, hey, we're gonna got this deal right here with Micromax, they're a bit more reputable of a company. They have a huge market in India. It probably is a bit of a smarter move for them to kind of move from OnePlus to Micromax, but the way they did it via an email, that does kind of look really bad on CyanogenMod's part, or Cyanogen Inc.'s part, the way they would terminate a big business agreement like that when they were kind of the sole creator of the OS for the OnePlus One. So just kind of wrap it up, I do understand why they did it, but I'm just really not pleased with the way they executed the whole thing.
On my end, I can't even say I understand why they did it. I get the reasons that they've given. And I've read all the blog posts, relevant, on Cyanogen's website and all that. But you just can't, especially for somebody new, you can't run a business that way. And here's why. Everybody who bought, first of all, we see some very flippant behavior on the part of their CEO. And Chuck, right before the show, made a good point. The CEO is not a user. He does not care about the user, and he does not care about the experience on the phone or whether or not we get our software updates, which is, yeah, that's the nature of the game, but at the same time, you can fire a CEO. You can, and yeah, you made a good point, Chuck. It's not ideal, especially if that CEO has made good choices in the past. But you can, and in this case, when a CEO does something that basically makes, to me, as a user of a OnePlus One up until yesterday, it would make me say I will never buy another device with a CyanogenMod sticker on it, because I can't trust you to update it. What if the device I decide to buy that year or whatever, that month, more likely, you just drop and say, oh, sorry, we're not going to support that, and I don't get any more updates, because that's what that first and second email were. They were, we will not be updating the OnePlus One anymore, and we're terminating our relationship. And they even said we're not going to be meeting in China. It wasn't like we're not going to be meeting to discuss the India something or other, and we're not going to support the India OnePlus One. It was, we are terminating our contract. That was a very firm no. There will be no further relationship. Now, after OnePlus One has done some, pleading, probably begging and pleading to say you have to update this phone, they will be updating the global version and the US version. I don't know if those are one and the same, but anyway, they will be updating the versions that are not sold in India. But still, if that was something they were willing to do, at least while this CEO's around, no, I would not buy another CyanogenMod phone. And that was a very, very telling move for them.
Right, I kind of can agree with you on that too, because I actually bought a Moto X and replaced this by selling my OnePlus One, And this is kind of around the time when we first started to hear those rumors and those news stories come up about the OnePlus One coming to India, and then then Cyanogen coming out and saying that they won't be updating it, then coming out again saying they will update it, then coming out again saying they meant the global version. So I was already in the mindset that I'm going to buy the Moto X because I got that $140 off and 30% off all accessories through their Cyber Monday code deal sale they had. So I was already in the mindset to buy the Moto X, but then after just seeing this complete crap storm of stuff going on with OnePlus and CyanogenMod in India, you put that on top of all the other problems OnePlus has had. Granted that my decision to kind of sell the OnePlus One is based more off of Cyanogen Inc.'s actions with the way they've been handling things, but even that's probably a bigger problem because CyanogenMod is really the sole ROM for the OnePlus One for at least the US and the global version, if that's the same thing. So I know it definitely kind of maybe led me more towards a decision of, hey, maybe I don't want to stick with this phone because the future of it is pretty shady with everything that's been going on. Granted, at the time, we were only talking about the India OnePlus One, but still, when you have all that shakiness and really not a firm ground for if a phone is going to get software updates, and you've got two companies who are still both very, very in their infancy, kind of having so many issues like that, me as a OnePlus One owner who absolutely loved the phone, it did kind of make me want to go ahead and just get rid of it and go with a company that I knew I'd have support from and would get updates from consistently.
Yeah, I mean, what you can equate this to here is basically someone like Google saying, yeah, we just released the Nexus 6, we're glad all you guys bought it, but we're done with it. We're going to go, move on. And, the Motorola, whatever the next phone is, Apple gave us a phone, so we're going to go develop for them. Forget all you guys that bought the Nexus 6. I mean, this is exactly what this is like.
Well, it's a little worse actually, because in the case that you're describing, there are going to be some other people who will probably have already put out ROMs for that phone, and in the case of CyanogenMod, what they do is put out an operating system and then customize the ROM to work on just scores and scores of phones that are out there, even outdated phones. There are people tweaking their ROMs to run on. So for them to turn around and say, we're no longer going to develop for the OnePlus One is, and that's one that they know everything about already. They were involved in building it. They know what the hardware is. They know what the firmware is. For them to turn around and say, hey, out of all the phones that are on the market that have been put out in the last 3 or 4 years that we're going to put out ROMs for, we're no longer going to support this one. So that's not just dumping it. That's really like an act of war.
Well, and for me, it didn't bother me so much if it was my phone. If I was still using the OnePlus One, which I've been planning on replacing it ever since I thought about getting an Nexus 6. And if it was my phone, it wouldn't be such a big deal because I can put on a custom ROM. But for instance, I passed the OnePlus One over to my wife, and yesterday I got the Nexus 6 in the mail, and I put the OnePlus One back to stock. I put my wife's account on to her stock is because she doesn't like to, or the reason I did that is because she doesn't like to deal with any of the little quirks of having a rooted phone. So when I started reading an article that started off saying we will no longer be supporting the OnePlus One, I was hot because no, I don't want to have to, I don't mind rooting my wife's phone, but she doesn't want me to do with it. She doesn't want to deal with that. She doesn't want to have a new operating system on it every time she touches it. She doesn't want to have risk losing her information and all that stuff. So to me, it's like she's never going to get an update now. I'm going to have to change her phone, again, and we just upgraded her. So that, to me, that was what bothered me. So anybody who doesn't root, those are the people who are really getting screwed. Because if you root, if it's good hardware, developers are going to develop. And you're going to have a late ROM, an up-to-date ROM. But for people who don't want to deal with rooting, if the company doesn't support it, it's the same. It's the same exact problem we've had with every Samsung phone pre-2014. Oh, it's not getting updated. Sorry.
Well, OnePlus was also in the news. Well, for something a little bit nicer than what we've been talking about right now, we actually had some leaked images of a supposed OnePlus One Mini, and I'll go ahead and screen share this for you. Apologies if you are listening to the podcast for this, but we do have the OnePlus One Mini here, and from the looks of it, it looks like it's going to be a bit more lower spec than what we've seen in the original OnePlus One so far. But supposedly we are looking at a 5-inch display, which is definitely quite a bit smaller than the 5.5-inch that is the OnePlus One. So it looks like, just looking from the picture, we still have kind of the same design language from the OnePlus One with that raised bezel there. And it looks like we've got a pretty beefy bottom bezel there too. But it looks like essentially we're just looking at kind of a more mid-range and a smaller OnePlus One. So what are your guys' thoughts on a mini version of the OnePlus One?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about it. It looks like it's running the Snapdragon 615, which is interesting for a lower end. I would have expected maybe a 410 or something like that. 5-inch screen. I don't know. I don't really consider a 5-inch screen a mini. Maybe that's just me.
But
You know,
that's what
I
they
would
are
consider.
now. The G3 is a 5-inch. The G3 Mini is a 5-inch.
Yeah, I know. Everything's a big phone, but I don't know. I guess I just don't consider a 5-inch phone a mini. But I guess the question to me is, if you can't produce enough of your flagship phone and it's still invite only, why are you trying to produce another phone?
That's OnePlus logic.
And why would you go backwards? I mean, I get like they'll be able to make more money on even a cheaper, more budget range phone, which the Snapdragon 615 isn't a high-end processor. It's just a 64-bit processor. It's a 64-bit low-end processor. But still, they're going to be able to make more money on it, and if they can keep it in stock, they'll be able to make a lot more money on it. But yeah, you're right. If you're a company that can only focus on one phone at a time, you need to be coming out with the best phones on the market, because especially modders, like, nobody's going to buy that. I mean, nobody. Maybe for their friends, you know, for a family member or something. But I don't know anybody except for, like, I don't know, you schmucks on this show who would go for 2 gigs of RAM.
Well, yeah, 2 gigs is more than enough for anything, but we'll discuss that later. You know where this phone actually would have been a perfect phone for, and I'm not saying that this was their intended market, but India. The Moto G has sold like hotcakes in India, is my understanding. I mean, that thing is like flying off the shelves in India. So maybe this was targeted towards the Indian market, which enjoys a little bit lower range spec phones. It seems that market, there's not as much of a demand for a high end over there as there is more the mid or low range. That kind of seems to be, you know, the kind of phone it's pretty popular in that area. So maybe this was what they were thinking about introducing to the Indian market first. I don't know.
Well, I know the first article I read about it said that it was probably kind of aimed at Android One, which is bigger in India. Well, I think it's only in India.
Yeah.
Right. I think from what I've seen so far, the phone, if it does turn out to be true, take it with a grain of salt. But the suggested retail price that we've been seeing is about $240. So for an unlocked phone, that's definitely pretty cheap. But you're really only talking, what is it? OnePlus One starts for $300, so really only a $60 difference for considerably lower specifications. So if you consider that really just a difference of $60, I'm not sure if that's really something OnePlus is going to do that great with. Now, personally, what I would like to see from OnePlus One Mini is maybe a slightly smaller display at 4.7 inches or so to really be mini by today's standards, but still keep, you know, the Snapdragon 800 or the 801 and 3 gigs of RAM. Make it a beefy and a powerful phone, but lower the screen size and possibly the resolution to 720p if you're going down to 4.7 inch or so. So still make it powerful like we saw with the Sony Xperia Z3 Compact earlier this year, but just a smaller form factor. But then again, that's kind of a problem we have with all mini phones in the market. You take any number of Samsung's mini phones or the LG mini phones or pretty much most manufacturers except Sony. Yes, they're mini and they're smaller, but they're generally usually nothing like their flagship counterparts, which is just kind of the downfall of the smaller screen as we're moving more and more towards tablet-sized smartphones, which we will get into a little bit later at Tony's espresso shot for sure. So moving off from phones for a bit, though, we've got kind of a big story to talk about right here. We've got some phones talked about, but this past week has been a lot of news going around with Sony's hack that first started that we talked about last show. But now we've got some stuff. North Korea got involved. The interview got pulled from theaters. So, Chuck, go ahead. What the heck is brewing with this whole Sony debacle right now?
I don't know the full story. I know some of it, but apparently, of course, Sony, the hackers, and the speculation is North Korea. That's kind of who everyone's pointed to, but I don't think that. I mean, obviously, North Korea hasn't come out and said, "Yeah, we did it," and I don't know if the evidence has been strong enough necessarily to say that they did it. Can we guess they did it? Yeah, probably. But who knows?
Well, the latest news this afternoon, the FBI issued a report saying that they are pointing it at North Korea.
So, well, okay, I trust the FBI as much as I trust any other government agency. But go ahead, Aaron. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say something that, essentially what Fred said, which is that our government has pretty much said that we believe that North Korea had, the lion's share to do with sourcing this hack.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I guess if you believe the FBI and the government, which I suppose we can, then sure, it was North Korea. Whoever it was.
Well, it's what's out there in the media in any event. So that's the news for today is that the FBI has reported that.
Okay. So the hackers had promised a Christmas package coming. And apparently it was tied to something related to the fact that if the interview was showed in theaters, that there might be some kind of terrorist attack on these theaters, something related to that. And so a bunch of theaters got cold feet and decided that we weren't actually going to show the interview anymore. I haven't heard of anything actually happening yet. So Fred, please jump in here. You might know a little bit more on this than I do. So it was news, but nothing's really happened other than a movie being pulled from movie theaters so far.
Well, that's basically what it is. What kind of hit the news on Wednesday, I guess the day before yesterday, was the threats of something happening on Christmas Day, which was the release day of the interview. Warnings coming from North Korea saying that Americans should not go see the movie. Remember what happened on September the 11th. And most of the major motion picture, movie theater chains announced that they would not be carrying the film. And by late in the day, by the end of like business.
Oh, I think we lost Fred.
So it raises a number of... Oh, sorry?
And I lost you for a second, Fred.
Oh, sorry. Latest news by the end of the day on Wednesday was that Sony announced that they would not be releasing the movie on Christmas Day and had no future plans to release. So it raises a couple of interesting questions. One is... of course, we don't know the validity to all of this. We don't know if there's a connection between the Sony Pictures Entertainment hacks and threats from North Korea, although that's what everything is being pointed at as of now. But the question here is, if everything...
I think we might have lost Fred again.
Yeah, well...
to fold in what looks like a cyber war, so some kind of a cyber attack. And then the other thing is this the first situation that we know of in which there's a major corporate hack, which it looks like is being specifically blamed on another government? In which case, it's should it be perceived as an act of war? Is the question. If the government is doing this, is this the same as dropping bombs on us or flying a plane into our skyscrapers and so forth?
I shouldn't say it's. I would say no. It's not. It shouldn't be perceived as an act of war, and the reason is because they are targeting our government. Now, making any kind of threat on our well-being at all, that could be considered an act of war. But I haven't read anything about the threat, so I would have to look into that more. But as far as hacking Sony Pictures and the like, assuming that there is no actual weight behind any kind of threat of harming us or Christmas packages or whatever it is, no, because it's Sony. It's not the government.
Well,
Right.
but be careful if you look at the parallel with at tangible real property. If a foreign government attacks some part of our country militarily, if
Yeah.
it's not a government installation, does that mean it's not an act of war? I would think that it probably is. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that this North Korea hack is indeed an act of war, but where do if you draw it into the real world, the parallel, I think that we need to be careful, and I think that's why our government is behaving the way it is towards this hack, and considering if you attack any of our companies on our soil, that's just as bad as lobbing a warhead on our country, and so we need to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I guess the whole thing for me, you guys can chime in with your opinion on what you think about this, but this is kind of the first time we've ever seen like a major motion picture film get pulled because of a threat or something like that. And if you're not familiar with what the interview is about, it's essentially kind of just a slapstick, stupid comedy with Seth Rogen and James Franco, where I haven't read about the plot, but I think they're assassins or something, or spies, and they are on a mission to try to go kill Kim Jong-un in North Korea. So the plot line is pretty stupid. I mean, it's no artsy film that's going to really get to your heart or anything like that. It's kind of along the lines of Pineapple Express or The Neighbors, kind of those comedies you kind of come to expect from the theaters nowadays. So the plotline itself is already kind of controversial, I mean, but the reason the theaters pulled it, I can understand that, if something were to happen to a theater, so say that some theater decides to still show the movie before Sony went ahead and canceled it, even just the chance, if something did happen, if there was a shooting, God forbid, or anything did happen to a theater that did show the movie, then the theater's going to get blamed and Sony's going to get blamed. It's going to be a whole mess of just bad stuff everywhere. But also, you got to think the theaters, this is probably a movie that before this happened was already not getting great reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and by other different movie critics. There's a lot of movies to show this holiday season, so a theater is saying, hey, maybe we don't want to show this, let's go ahead and show Battle of Five Armies or something like that. You kind of throw those in the mix, and it's like, well, it's kind of obvious why we wouldn't show this, but then again, we've got not hypothetical threats, we have real supposed threats from North Korea. But then again, it's kind of the idea that maybe fear won in this case, or that the hackers won, because they got Sony to stop their premiere in New York, they got theaters to pull the movie, which granted, it's probably best that they did, but still just more think about it. It's like the hackers and just kind of fear won in this situation. So I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on that angle of it?
Yeah, it's, where were we, 6, 8, 10 years ago, what was the battle cry? Well, if you change what you do, the terrorists win, and that's what we've seen a lot of celebrities come out with tweets to that effect here this last week. We saw Steve Carell had his movie that he was working on get canceled. You mentioned what are these theaters going to replace this movie with? An interesting side note, my favorite side note, was that the Alamo Drafthouse in Texas and some other theaters were actually going to, instead of the interview, they were going to air Team America World Police, which, if you know anything about that, that's an even more ridiculous comedy that is, even more, aggressive towards North Korea. And then shortly after Paramount heard that, they decided to cancel that as well. And so we've seen another movie get pulled based on the same threat. And so it's really a depressing turn of events for those of us who enjoy the arts and not that I would have necessarily enjoyed that movie. I'm not endorsing that movie or what it would have been, but for a foreign actor to make a threat against a corporation in this country and to have this wide of an effect, it's scary.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on it for too much longer, but I do agree, and I guess what doesn't make any sense to me is why was it the Paramount or the motion pictures canceling the movies, and why wasn't it up to the actual theaters themselves? I mean, what does it matter for Sony or Paramount or any of these other things what happens at a theater? I mean, because of their movie, if a theater decided to show it, a theater decided to show it, furthermore.
They've got other shows at those same theaters, and they don't want the threat to depress turnout from the viewers who might be concerned about that threat.
That's true. It's not just a theater showing the interview. It's a 24-plex with with 24 other movies playing.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting definitely to see next year if we see any other movies get pulled for possible threats or possible issues of things arising like this again. So it will be really interesting to see if any of this pans out or excels in more detail in 2014. So moving on from that, though, we do have one final freshly brewed news story. I am actually not sure what this is about. We got something about some router vulnerability discovered, so I'm clueless with what this is. So
Okay.
Chuck, go ahead, and or Fred, either one of you, go ahead and take it away. What's going
Yeah,
on here?
real quickly, in today's news, a report from Checkpoint Security, big security firm, has discovered a bug which is apparently in, they're estimating as many as 12 million home and small office routers, which will, they're considering it to be a critical hack with the possibility of hijacking any device that's on the other side of these routers. It's being called the misfortune cookie vulnerability, and I don't have too much in the way of specifics about it other than that there is a vulnerability in firmware in a large number of routers, which would potentially allow somebody to take over administrative rights. And by doing so, once you're in that position, you are then in a position to effectively take over computers or other devices that are on the other side of the router, which presumably is something that we're getting. We're expecting things to be protected when we're on the inside of a router. And not just computers, but nowadays it's all kinds of devices. So printers, many of us have phones on our home Wi-Fi when we're at home, tablets, home security cameras, kitchen appliances, toasters, refrigerators, all kinds of stuff. What's interesting is that it's no specifics, but it looks like there are about 200 different models of routers that are potentially affected. And according to Checkpoint, the kind of Q&A on their release asks the question, is it that bad? And their answer is a one-word yes. So Chuck, I don't know, do you know more about the specifics of the vulnerability, or is the information just not out there?
No, it is. I mean, the thing is with something like this, they generally release a pretty good, proof of concept, or this is how it is. So basically, I think the biggest problem with this particular thing is it doesn't take a lot to actually exploit this vulnerability. The reason it's called the misinformation cookie is basically because an attacker, all they have to do is send a very, very simple HTTP cookie to that device, and it essentially corrupts the device and allows that attacker to take over administrative control. So the biggest problem with this is it's easily scriptable. It's easy for some attacker who really wants to. And let me put a caveat on this, that Checkpoint has said that they have not actually seen this exploit being actively used in the wild yet. But it's only a matter of time. I mean, once exploits like this are announced, it doesn't take very long for someone to start spinning their wheels on it. But the thing is it does not take a very large amount of technical expertise to exploit this particular thing, and it's very easily scriptable, which means that someone is going to write something, they're going to start scanning routers, they're going to start taking them over. And this isn't the first time that we've seen routers be vulnerable to attacks. So something I would caution everyone here is, just like your computer, keep your router up to date. And if you have one that is vulnerable and the manufacturer's not going to update it, go buy a new one. I hate to say that, but unfortunately, routers, a lot of times people kind of set them and forget them. They've worked, so we don't do anything to them until they stop working. And that's kind of the equivalent of just letting your computer sit there without actually installing updates to it. Could it work? Sure, but you're potentially opening yourselves up to attacks. There are. I'm a big fan of the more open source routers. My current favorite, the Asus lines, they're AC 66, 68, 97s, I think, or 87s, are awesome because the entire firmware for those is completely open source. Asus has been pretty incredible about updating those routers, keeping them up to date. very frequent firmware updates. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever seen a router company be quite as proactive with updates as ASUS has with their AC line. So that's, if you are looking for a new router, that is one I highly recommend. But the other thing is the router is kind of the control point to your network. I think one of the scariest things, the potential here, that if someone does get control of your router, there are a number of things they could do with it. They can change DNS servers so that you're, and the biggest problem with that is then you think you're going to Google, but in fact you're going to one of their malicious servers, and now you're giving them your Google credentials and you don't even know about it. And that's just one example of some of the things that people could do if they were to potentially get a hold of your router. So I don't want to, put out the red flags or anything, but it is a little bit scary, and it's definitely something to be aware of. And I think the biggest problem with it right now is, unlike a computer where it's pretty easy to run a piece of software that says, "Am I vulnerable?" It's a lot harder to do that on a router, especially for this one, because there's not a lot of identifying information when it comes to firmware on routers, the internals, those kind of things. So it's kind of hard to track these kind of things. So I guess that's some of the things as a general caution to people, as well as kind of a little bit more information about this.
Yeah, so just kind of, I know I've been guilty of that. Sometimes just like setting the router there and just maybe getting about it for a while. But yeah, that is something that's you got to keep in mind for sure if you want to just make sure you're secured and good to go for all that kind of good stuff. But that about wraps up our freshly brewed news for the night. So I had some awesome stuff there. But now we're going to go ahead and take a little segment. We're going to look back on 2014, at least in the world of technology. There's been a lot of stuff that went on this past year for 2014. A lot of exciting technologies that came out, a lot of duds. But all in all, it's a pretty solid year for smartphones, tablets, wearables, all that awesome stuff. So we're just going to kind of go around the round table here, go ahead and touch on each of our hosts here for the Brew Crew tonight, and we're just going to talk about maybe what stuck out to us the most this year, or what we're going to remember most from 2014. So I'll just go ahead and go from my left to right. Aaron Traffas, so what stuck out to you when you look back at 2014? What's maybe a device or a story or just anything really technology that you're going to be remembering in 2015?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and take the obvious, which is going to be Android Wear. We saw that come out, and I appreciate you letting me go first so that I can take the low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely.
We saw it come out, and
you are the guest, so hey.
I appreciate that. I was certainly very, very excited to hear about it. I was hoping all year, when we started the year, I was really hoping that this might be the year I might get to try out Google Glass, and we saw that kind of not happen, but we did get to have smartwatches, and so I got my Zen watch today after playing with the Gear Live here the last month or two, and it does some things really well, and it does some things, it's got some room to grow, and so but I think as far as the hello world of Android Wear devices, the smartwatches are very promising.
Yeah, I know. I came from a Pebble Steel before Android Wear came out, and there's still some stuff Google needs to improve, like you said. But for the most part, for kind of a first-gen OS for wearables, it is very impressive how feature-packed it is. So, we'll go ahead and go to Chuck after Aaron took probably one of the more obvious ones this year. What do you got for us, Chuck, for your fond memories of 2014?
Well, I've actually got a couple of them. I'm going to go along the Android lines and definitely say Lollipop, which I think, despite some of the bugs that it does have, is the most polished OS that Google has put out. So polished, in fact, that we got the Nexus 6 at a flagship price for a flagship phone that we finally weren't compromising on something for a Nexus device. I think the Nexus 6 was probably the first phone that Google felt good about because Lollipop was good enough to finally start taking on Apple at that price point with the specs and kind of push the market a little bit. So I will definitely say Nexus 6 Lollipop is one of them. And I'm going to go the Microsoft route and say that Microsoft has amazed me with their direction this year. I think the Surface Pro 3 is probably the best device Microsoft has ever released. It's a pretty awesome device. It is definitely the showcase of what a device that Windows should run on. And furthermore, just some of the actions Microsoft is taking. They're open sourcing a lot of stuff. They're releasing a ton of stuff on Android and iOS even. They've also got all their Office products on Android, iOS, OneNote. They've even released a launcher for Android. So Microsoft is finally starting to branch out from just Windows only to other devices, and I think it's really, really starting to pay dividends for them. And then from something a little more dear to my heart from the development world, the announcement of .NET going open source, I think, was one of the biggest things from a development perspective for this entire year. I'm really anxious to see where that goes in the future.
Yeah, so definitely good stuff there all around too. I know Lollipop is very near and dear to my heart, and it's pretty insane and awesome on the Moto X with all the Motorola goodies, and then Lollipop on there makes for one darn tasty treat on Android. So go ahead and go next. To my right, we have got Fred. So Fred, what is your looking back on 2014? What are you gonna maybe remember the most?
Well, certainly Lollipop. I'm just going to add quickly to what Chuck said regarding Microsoft. A lot of interesting artificial intelligence stuff coming out of Microsoft as well. Most people, if you follow AI, most people think in terms of Google, self-driving car, and so on. But without going too far off in that direction, a number of really cool AI initiatives coming out of Microsoft's labs, deep learning initiatives, and so on. I've got a number of pieces that I've written up on techdissect.com, little self-plug there. But getting back to products and so on, I'm going to go a little bit in another direction. Thing that got me most excited just in the last few weeks, although it's been out for a while, is Google Cardboard. Everybody's waiting for the Oculus Rift, and now Samsung Gear VR has actually been released, and I have not gotten my hands on one yet. But Google Cardboard is out there. It's available. It's affordable. For anybody watching or listening that's not familiar, back in the summer, I think around July or so, Google announced Google Cardboard, which is basically an inexpensive virtual reality headset, which can be made with sheet of cardboard. Oh, here's Joe giving us the demo model. It's basically a square foot or two of cardboard with about $10 worth of lead.
Looks like we have lost Fred once again.
Did I freeze up? I think I froze up again.
Yeah, just for a second.
Yeah. Inexpensive virtual reality headset, and there are a couple of unofficial items out there which are basically built using the plans that Google put out, and it's a cheap headset into which you insert your Android phone. So anybody with an Android phone and a few bucks can have one of these. I did not rush out and get and do it when they announced it. Although Google put its own app out because I didn't think there was any content for it, and then in the course of blogging, I discovered a company called Jaunt, I believe, which put out the first what they're calling cinematic HD content for virtual reality, which was a clip of a Paul McCartney concert. It's only about 3 minutes, but as opposed to most of what's out there for VR, this was high-definition audio-video concert film, 360-degree views, and it's just awesome. So I am super excited about it. Google has got some stuff out there too, and this is something that I also can't wait to see where it goes in the next year or so. So a little bit of a curveball in terms of what everybody else is talking about, but that's what's getting me pumped up at this point.
Yeah, well, I have to agree with you 100% there because I've had my cardboard I think I had bought it and it got here in July this past summer. And it's not something I take off my shelf every single day and play with. But I know I kind of, when that Jaunt app came out, the Paul McCartney concert clip, once that came out, that really got me to start using it a lot more. Because, all you need, pretty much everyone has an Android smartphone, at least probably most of the people watching our show. You guys probably do. But just for, you can buy the schematics and the parts to build it for like $10 on Amazon, or get an assemble one like this for $20 or $30. But all you do, just take your phone and put it in the cardboard, and you're good to go. So, when you're comparing it to things like the Samsung Gear VR with Oculus technology and the Oculus Rift, the developer kit 2 that's out, it's definitely a little bit less powerful since you're really just using the accelerometer and the gyroscope in your phone. But for $30 most, it's a very, very fun piece of technology to use, and it'll also be something I'm going to be remembering going into 2015. I'm really looking forward to see how that does progress as 2015 does go on. So awesome, thank you for that, Fred. And we'll go ahead and move on to Spec Sheet Tony McAfee. What is one of your favorite things looking back on it 2014 for technology?
Well, Chuck pretty much took all of the good stuff. No, but no, I will piggyback on Chuck. I am going to piggyback on Chuck's because what he mentioned about the Nexus is what I'm thinking, and it's that initially there was some shock when we heard how much the Nexus 6 was going to cost, but it was Google answering all of the Nexus fanboys, and I don't mean developers, I mean Nexus fanboys cries, which were, hey, we want a pure Android device that rocks, that's just the top of the line specs. So the fact that it was cost more and that it has a little bit higher end flagship quality specs, and you really can't beat it. The battery life could be better, but so far it's totally usable from what I've seen. It's still alive right now, and I put it through the paces today. So that is probably what I'm thinking. And then on the other side, I hate to ever say anything positive about Apple, but I have to say that another thing I will remember fondly about this year is the fact that Apple broke out of their shell, and they released, not only did they release larger displays on their current line, they also released 2 options. So now they're kind of breaking into the world of Android where sometimes you had to make some compromises on specs if you wanted a certain size phone, but at least you had those options available to get whatever size you want. And even up to, you can get a 7-inch phone or an 8-inch phone like Alvi, who, it's a tablet, but it's a phone. It works as a phone. So stuff like that. I'm just happy to see Apple kind of joining the 21st century, as it were.
And I'll just mention a little bit on that. Hell froze over also, and Apple finally allowed third-party keyboards as well as widgets in the pull-down, and kind of the Android-esque sharing. Like the share menu in Android's always been awesome. iOS finally allowed something similar to that. So it was kind of the year of interesting things for Apple's from the software world, at least iOS-wise.
Well, guys, in 2015, we're going to be able to share our heart rate with our friends with the Apple Watch, so holding out for that.
That's right, yeah, buddy.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and touch on my thing I'll remember for 2014. For me, without a doubt, it's got to be just how much butt kicked Motorola this year. Starting out, this January, I think we saw the Moto E come out, which is definitely one of the lower spec phones we've seen all year, but the thing had a starting price tag of like $130 or something ridiculously cheap like that. Definitely very low specifications, but for developing markets and developing countries, one heck of an Android smartphone. It may not be for any one of us that are power users, but for just browsing some light web, checking email, calling, texting, it was perfect. And then move throughout the year, and we got the Moto X 2nd Gen, we got the Moto G 2nd Gen, and the beloved Moto 360. Chuck's got his Moto X right there too. And I have not had the chance yet to use the Moto G 2nd Gen or the Moto 360, but I know Tony does have the Moto 360. I think he's been having a good time with that. But this Moto X, coming from the OnePlus One, which was one of my favorite phones of 2014, I'm absolutely in love with the Moto X. I had the Moto X from 2013. That was one of my favorite Android phones of all time, and the Moto X just tops it in pretty much every way. So we had some awesome stuff there, awesome smartwatch, probably one of the better ones and one of the best ones we've seen of 2014, and just in regards to smartwatches in general. The Moto G, which is essentially the Moto G from 2013, just with a slightly improved camera and a larger display, which still for the $179 price point unlocked. Granted, it's again kind of more of a low-end to mid-range smartphone, but still for $180 you can't do a lot worse. I mean, you can't do a lot better than going for something like that. And then the Moto X, again, one of my favorite phones. But then we also had some stuff later on in the year. We had the Droid Turbo, which was exclusive to Verizon Wireless, but Tony, myself, and Aaron actually did a roundtable about the Droid Turbo. Some of the, probably one of the highest spec, if not the highest spec phone we've seen all year. Just insane specifications all around. Gigantic battery, I believe it was a 3,900 milliamp hour unit. Quad HD display, 21 megapixel rear-facing camera, just all around really fantastic specs and the best phone, at least in my opinion, Verizon has got to date in their catalog of devices. And then Motorola also manufactures the Nexus 6, which Tony has been liking so far. I've actually got one myself right here that I'm reviewing. Really, really fantastic phone. So you just kind of add all that together, Motorola just really nailed it. You have the Moto E for very, very budget, for the very, very low-end market. Moto G for, again, the mid-range market. Moto X is a flagship. Droid Turbo is a flagship. The Nexus 6 is a flagship. And the Moto 360 as kind of a flagship smartwatch. So if you actually want to read some more detail, I wrote an article. I'll do a shameless plug too, like Fred did earlier. I wrote an article for the Droid Goblin, and the article was about Motorola, and the title of it was "The Next Big Thing Is Here," and its name is Motorola, which just kind of goes into more detail about the company as a whole throughout the year. And granted, we did have the official merger go through to Motorola being a Lenovo company, so we really didn't see a whole lot of influence of that merger this year, but we will most likely be seeing a lot more of it come 2015. But as it stands right now, I think Motorola absolutely knocked it out of the park in pretty much all areas for 2014. And going into 2015, I can't wait to see what the company does have to offer. So,
it'll be interesting to see if a lot of the innovation that we saw out of Motorola, and I agree with you, and I'm super excited because I've been a Motorola fan for a very long time. It'll be interesting to see if that innovation was a function of being under the Google umbrella. And it'll be interesting to see next year if they can do the same and as well now that they are under Lenovo.
Definitely, because I mean, you pick up a Moto X or really any Motorola smartphone, and it's essentially stock Android just with Motorola's additions thrown in. So you look at Lenovo smartphones, and they're pretty heavily skinned. Now, this isn't to say that Motorola smartphones in 2015 will be having the same skin that Lenovo smartphones do, but like Aaron, you said, it will be kind of cool to see if Motorola stays in that same direction they've been going, because there's obviously still some heavy influence from Google within the company. We'll be very curious to see just how much of that does remain under the new ownership from Lenovo. So, yeah, definitely some good stuff to keep an eye out there for 2015 with Motorola. But kind of going into that, looking forward to 2015, we looked back a bit, but now it is time to go ahead and move forward with what we maybe predicting we're going to see, what we may want to see. So just kind of looking forward and maybe getting a little having some fun here, just throwing out some guesses as to what we'll see, and come back and watch this part of the video this time of year next year and see how accurate we were with our predictions. So we'll go ahead and give the reins to Aaron once again, so we can go ahead and grab the easy topics once again, being our special guest of honor. Aaron, looking forward to 2015. What's maybe something you're predicting we're going to see, or maybe something you're hoping to see in the next coming year?
Something I'm predicting that we'll see is a lot, and I thought maybe this year would be it, but the prediction would be I think we'll see a lot of development in 3D printing. I think we'll see a lot more home adoption of that. Right now it's your really early adopters, but I really think, and I thought maybe 2014 would be like I said, but I really think we'll see, 3D printers have a real use case that is understood by a lot more people. Really what I'm hoping to see is Google Glass. I really want a Glass release that works, that solves the problems that the current Android Wear iteration has for me, which is that it's not hands-free, it's phone-free, which is great, and it's a step in the right direction. But for me on the combine, I need hands-free, and I don't want to. And most of the time, if I do my little hold the phone up, and hope the screen comes on so I can talk to it. Most of the time, it doesn't recognize that, and so I still find myself reaching over to tap the thing to make it come on so it'll listen to me, and then all of a sudden, I've taken both my hands off controls. So I really want some Google Glass this year. That's affordable. That's not quite so hideously ugly as the current iteration.
Yeah, I got a chance to play around with Glass. I think it was this time last year. And I know I took it out in public and to the grocery store using it as a checklist. And, I definitely heard some people whispering and kind of looking at me kind of strange. But there is definitely a lot of potential there. I know there was a lot of moments where I really could see where this could be a product that I would want to use. But at its current state and at its current price of $1,500, no, we got to see some improvement there and some reduction in price before I'm ready to plop down any cash on it. So definitely an awesome prediction there. Thank you very much for sharing that. And we'll go ahead and move on to Chuck once again. Something you're maybe predicting or looking forward to for 2015.
Well, something I'm predicting, and I'll go ahead and steal probably Tony's thunder again, and that's OnePlus, well, more specifically CyanogenMod crashing and burning. I'm anticipating that probably happening this year, especially if they don't get their act together. Maybe not a complete crash and burn, but possibly going to the point of irreparable damage to their image. Even if they have enough money, it's their image, I think, that's going to suffer greatly, especially with some of the moves they're making. The one thing that I'm going on complete, this is what I want, I have no idea if we'll even see this year, is I want the Microsoft Surface, but I want the Apple version of it. I'm an OS 10 kind of guy. I'm a Mac guy. Love my Mac. Windows is okay, but I want my Mac. I honestly want the Surface form factor, and when it's docked, I want full OS 10. When I pull it off, I want basically an iPad. I want to switch into like iOS mode. If Apple can pull that off, I don't care what it costs. I'm throwing money at them because I want it.
Yeah, definitely fun to think about some potential products we may or may not see, but always some fun stuff with that. So moving right along to Back from the Dead, Fred. When you're coming back from the dead in 2015, what are you hoping to see in tech?
Well, I'm going to echo a lot of what's been said already. Looking forward to more Android Wear. Google Glass would be awesome if it becomes affordable. It's certainly not a consumer mainstream product at this point in time. 3D printing, definitely. I am with you, Aaron, on that one. Exciting stuff going on there, from the ability to make your own tools at home, replace a part in something that just broke by downloading a blueprint and printing it out quickly, to 3D printed food. I think that is a super exciting technology as it becomes more and more affordable and closer to being in the mainstream in terms of home purchases. And at the risk of being redundant, virtual reality. I'm really excited to see where some of this is going to go. The same company that put out Jaunt, that put out the Paul McCartney piece, is talking about more cinematic type releases, and it potentially becomes a whole new medium if you can now watch say a feature-length movie, although I don't know if we're there yet, but if you can start to watch video production in essentially 360-degree surround, with the ability to move around within that framework, also is potentially an incredible medium. And then, I guess this will be a nice segue to pass it off to Tony. I'm very interested to see where things go in terms of specs on mobile devices, which we're all following. We've seen those numbers increase dramatically in terms of speeds of CPUs, sizes of phones, screen resolution, and so on. And it will be interesting to see how far the envelope pushes on that. How far that goes in the coming year.
Yeah, so Tony, you want to share some stuff from that segue? Well, what are you kind of looking forward to for specs and all that for 2015. I think we're going to finally see some 4 gigs of RAM or 5 gigs for those of us who are feeling crazy.
Well, I certainly hope so. I would like to see a lot more, a lot higher end specs, and I think the main thing I'd like is I would like to see something Android-esque or even just more open source version of kind of the Surface Pro 3. Just a high-end desktop replacement almost that runs something other than Android or something other than Windows and something other than even Mac. I would prefer just a high-end Android, but we don't have an Android operating system that takes advantage of that yet. But that's what I would like to see that. And also, I'm interested to see these smaller companies just saturate the market with lower end or even mid-range but cheap devices that are good. Like, one of the reasons I love Blue devices is there's just no crap on them. They run pretty much pure Android. They're cheap, and they've got mid-range to low-end specs. But because they run plain old Android and there's no bloatware on them, they run really well, even on low-end specs, which is just unheard of for Android. If you have low-end specs, you're going to have a low-end experience for the most part. But that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing an increase in specs and a drop in prices for those that aren't really taking advantage of the ability to pack as many specs, as high-end specs into a device as possible.
Yeah, I know. I'm always a fan of Blue devices myself, and especially like you said, seeing what other smaller companies come out and maybe take advantage of those same type of business models with that. For me personally, though, I was thinking about this, and one thing that I wasn't thinking about earlier today. I'm actually really interested to see what Samsung does for 2015. Samsung is generally a company that I'm not too interested in. Yes, they're the biggest manufacturer of smartphones right now. They're flooding the market with a new smartphone practically every couple of hours, it seems like. But we saw with the Note 4, and it actually started with the Galaxy Alpha, Samsung finally using aluminum and kind of chamfered edges on their smartphones, which I've got the chance to hold the Alpha and the Note 4, and that new metal and the new aluminum edition makes a huge difference to how the phone feels. You hold a Note 4 compared to a Note 3, and I actually had a friend of mine message me on Facebook and say that he has the Note 3 right now. He wants to know if it'd be worth the upgrade to the Note 4, and I said even just for the new design element with the metal and the aluminum, it's worth it right there because it feels like a completely different product. And also with Samsung this year, we just kind of saw them slowly start to clean up TouchWiz, as ugly as it still may be. They've definitely made a lot of progress with it. Give them crap as you might, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of TouchWiz, but looking at it now to how it was a couple years ago in the Note 2, there has been a lot of improvement with it on that end. So going into 2015, I'm really excited to see how the build quality of Samsung devices does progress. We saw Samsung do it right with the Galaxy Alpha and with the Note 4, and also just the crazy stuff that Samsung tries. I mean, this year we saw the Note Edge, which may not be the most practical way of using a curved display, but I got the chance at Best Buy at least to toy around with it. And although personally I probably wouldn't get it, there is a lot of cool potential there, just for being able to open apps quickly or getting kind of a ruler or measuring tape right on the edge of it. Just Samsung's idea for throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks. I mean, that's how the whole Note line started. They just threw out, was it a 5.2-inch or a 5.3-inch phablet at the time, which when they originally released the original Note, it was like insane, but it worked, and that was just kind of one of those devices Samsung threw out there. It was a very niche product, but it stuck and people loved it. So I'm just looking forward to see what other kind of crazy concoctions Samsung puts together, and maybe seeing if one sticks. You know, the Edge may not necessarily be what we're looking for, but maybe something along those lines. And then also for me, being a Windows fan, I know I'm going to be the minority here, but I'm really looking forward to Windows 10. I know we were promised a connected and kind of cohesiveness between all of our platforms, between smartphones, tablets, desktops, and laptops with Windows 8, and Microsoft didn't really come through with those promises at all. But from what we've seen so far, at least from the desktop version of Windows 10, having the multiple virtual desktops and the return of the start screen, or at least the start menu, revamped with live tiles and that. What we've seen so far from the desktop version of Windows 10, I am extremely excited for. There's actually an event Microsoft is holding at the Redmond campus in Seattle sometime in January, where they said they're going to be talking about the next chapter for Windows 10, which we're kind of speculating and supposing it's going to be about Windows 10 for mobile. So I'm a huge fan of Windows, both on the desktop and even Windows Phone 8.1, which is out, is still a very fun operating system to use. Granted, the application store is still one of its weaker points, but it still has a lot of potential and a lot of really cool ideas. So I'm really hoping we can see some promise between interconnected information between our desktop, laptop, smartphone, and tablet. It's probably not going to be as awesome as Microsoft is talking about, but if we can at least move in the direction to that, maybe Microsoft will get the ball rolling and then another company will come in and we get the job finished. But just getting more progress toward that, having everything connected, is definitely something I'm really looking forward to in those regards for 2015. But I'll go ahead and talk about, Tony is talking about Blue making some fun products and making some good products that don't have any crap on them, like he said. And I personally am a big fan of Blue too. And I'm really looking forward to 2015 to seeing what else the company does kick out, because Blue makes fantastic kind of mid-range smartphones that are generally pretty inexpensive, but you're still getting a good quality device. And Tony actually has a very awesome Blue smartphone with him, believe it or not, when he holds it up on screen. But this is actually a device I'm very excited to see. So we got our espresso shot review, which I normally do, but I'm more than happy to let Tony take the reins with this one today. So Tony, what do you have to share with us for our final espresso shot review of 2014?
Well, this is a very interesting device, and I don't actually have it with me. It's downstairs. I just forgot to bring it up for the show, but I have the box. It's called the Studio 7, Studio 7.0, and this is a 7-inch smartphone. It's not a tablet. They're very emphatic saying it's not a tablet in the emails. It is a phablet or a phone, and it is a phone. I mean, you put a SIM card in it, you can make phone calls with it. It's a fantastic little budget device. And at MSRPs, we'll start with this before I get into the specs. At MSRPs, a 7-inch device that makes phone calls with a cell inside, MSRPs at $149.99. You can get it for slightly less on Amazon. I think you get it for $140, I think, on Amazon right now. But yeah, Studio 7.0. Check it out on Amazon. Blue Studio 7. It's got here. I'll get into the specs now. It's a 7-inch. They say HD display, but it's 600 by 1024. I was not under the impression that was HD, but they call it HD. So it's a 7-inch, 600 by 120 or 1024 resolution. It's a 1.3 gigahertz dual-core MediaTek processor, but it does run smoothly, as I said, because it runs pretty much stock Android KitKat 442. 5-megapixel rear camera and a 2-megapixel front camera, a gigabyte of RAM, 8 gigs of storage, up to a 32 gigabyte SD card. It runs HSPA Plus up to 21 megabits down, so you should be getting 4G, not LTE, but regular 4G HSPA Plus speeds on T-Mobile and AT&T. It is unlocked. It is 150 unlocked out the door. So even if you're just looking for a budget tablet that runs well, this is a really nice little option. And you could throw your... Now, I'm sorry to you guys at Blue, if you see this, but this is a good option for a tablet replacement, especially for somebody like Alvy, who he wants a device that is this size and does not want to carry around a phone. This is perfect. It does make phone calls natively and has data. It has been a great little large device that I've been playing around with. Comes in like 4 colors, I think: gray, white, blue, green maybe, or gold, and it is pretty much the same size as the original Nexus 7. It's a tiny bit smaller around the edges, but it's pretty much the same size, as exactly the same size screen. So it's been a very interesting little phone, large phone. But especially for older people who need something with larger for their vision, this is going to be a good answer, because it doesn't pack in a whole lot of specs, so you're not going to want to use it for anything hardcore. But I put the SimCity on there rather, and it runs it pretty well. So I don't notice any many frame drops, and I don't notice any lag. So it is a pretty nice device, and at only $150, I think it is the cheapest tablet-sized device with a cell in it that you can buy. Aside from maybe like the Alcatel One Touch Pop, whatever it is on T-Mobile, which I think it might be $100, but still, very, very good price for this, and one of the most standout devices that I've seen all year, just because of the sheer size and price of it.
Right, and I think one of the things that kind of sticks out to me the most is that, that is an actual phone. There's an earpiece and everything on it, which is just kind of crazy. We've got a 7-inch, essentially what you think would be a tablet, but it still has an earpiece and it's still a phone. But I know I showed my mom your unboxing video for that, and she's all about, the big phones and everything, and she was like freaking out, like, oh my god, I need like a 7-inch tablet. But then also I was thinking for my grandma too. She's got a phone, but it's a Blue Life Play, but it's 4.7-inch screen, which getting older, kind of harder to see stuff. So for a lot of people, especially like you said, maybe older folks out there who want a smartphone, but they want to have a bigger display on there, and maybe they're not going to be throwing it in their pocket or something all the time. But it is definitely an interesting product, and it's cool to see Blue branching out to maybe more of a niche market per se with that. But what do you think, Tony? You think that's a 7-inch smartphone is something you could carry around with you as a daily driver?
Yeah, I mean, but I am 6'2" and I weigh 360 pounds. So this device, I wish I had it up here with me. It does fit. I showed you guys last week.
Yep.
Showed you guys on the last week's show. It does fit in my pocket. But I'm one of very few people whose pockets it will fit. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, so like lower specifications, but you really honestly cannot beat $150 for, like you said, something that could replace essentially 2 devices, both a tablet and a smartphone. So really, that's a pretty phenomenal deal. And really, this Christmas season, if you know someone who may be looking for a smartphone and a tablet, this is a very inexpensive way to do it. And if you hurry up and order, maybe be able to get it in time for Christmas. So thank you. Awesome, very much, Tony. Do you guys have any follow-up questions for Tony about the Blue Studio 7.0?
Did you mention the battery performance on there? What size and what kind of life one could expect out of that?
It is a 3. Let me see. I mentioned in the review, in the unboxing, it is a 3,200 milliamp hour battery, I believe, or no, a 3,000. So it's a good sized battery, and running, you'd think, okay, that's smaller than a lot of devices with smaller screens. The bigger devices, like smaller than the Nexus 6, smaller than the Note 4, but it's pushing 600 by 1024 display. So it's really not using a lot of battery, and you're not going to be using it, like I said, to do a whole lot of processor-intensive stuff. So the battery performance has been good. I haven't had it die during the day, so it's been totally respectable for a 3,000 milliamp hour battery, 3,000 or 3,200. It's been an awesome battery life for that device.
All right, awesome. Well, definitely some good stuff there. And before we close it out, we do have a couple comments from Juan Sanchez. One of them, he said Motorola has the correct idea, referring again to our earlier discussion with Motorola pretty much owning 2014. And he also says, too, that Project Aura is what he wants to see go live, which is essentially that kind of phone block model where you've got the base phone, but you can kind of install different components of the phone to kind of make it yours. So what do you guys think about Project Aura? Is that something you're excited for still, or are you kind of not as excited as we were when it was first announced quite a while ago at this point now?
I'm excited by it, but I'm bored now listening to it. I want to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it intrigues me, mostly just because maybe we can finally upgrade our devices without having to buy a whole new device.
Yeah, so
it would be wonderful. It would be wonderful if it would work the way that they are describing it working. I am very skeptical that they will get it to work in such a way that it isn't aesthetically hideous or cumbersome, or twice the size of what another device with the same specs would be. I see some physical challenges to the plan.
Yeah, like I say, in concept it's kind of the dream idea, but in practicality, how well it would be executed is still definitely out there in the open. So I think that about wraps up all of our topics for tonight. Before I go ahead and do the final closeout, we'll go ahead and let all you guys throw in some final plugs and maybe kind of a last thought for 2014 before we go ahead and close it out. So we'll go ahead and do our special guest of honor, as always. First, Aaron Traffas. Go ahead and add any plugs or closing comments for the year.
Sure. No, it's been an exciting year in tech. I think 2014 it was great. There's been a lot of forward progress in a lot of different places. I'm excited to follow it. I write about technology and auctions on my blog at auctioneertech.com, and I also farm for part of the year as well, and write about my experiences there and the technology I use there at my personal blog at aarontraffas.com. And I sure thank you guys for letting me join the show tonight.
Definitely always a awesome time to have you on the show. Hopefully come on again sometime soon in 2015. So Chuck Haines, what is going on with you, my man?
Oh, not much. I don't think we actually have anyone who watches this from chess, but if we do, we are actually giving all of our chess members a very special Christmas gift next Tuesday. I won't say what it is yet because I don't know if the CEO has made it public or not yet, but those of you who use the site probably know what it is and have been anxiously waiting for it for about a year and a half now. So you guys can probably guess what it is. It is rolling out live next Tuesday.
Very awesome, conspicuous, mysterious stuff from Ones and Zeros. How about you, Fred? What's going on with you in your world?
Well, kind of winding down for the holidays at this point. Tech Dissected is on holiday hiatus. I'm working on some product reviews that'll be up there, some other things that are going on. I am not going, but I'm covetous of those who are going to CES International coming up in a week or two. But I do have some more interesting products coming in. There is a company called SwiftPoint out of New Zealand, actually, which makes a mouse with touch gestures, and I am eagerly awaiting getting this device as soon as they can get it through customs, apparently. So that will be forthcoming. And other than that, sure, it's been a great year. We've got a lot of interesting stuff coming up, a lot of exciting stuff, and looking forward to being back online after the new year.
Yeah, awesome. I think I remember reading an article on Tech Dissected. You read about that the motion watch, or that motion mouse. Definitely looked like a very, very interesting product. So Spec Sheet Tony, what is going on with you and final closing words for the year?
Well, like I said, I just got the Nexus 6, so I've been enjoying that. Still enjoying new dad life. That's pretty much what the next year of my life's going to be about. So I'll probably be dropping back in a lot of, the devices I review and stuff like that, try to get less. I already had too much on my plate before the baby was here, so probably be stepping back a little bit from reviewing and maybe put out a little bit less. But other than that, I've just been kind of easing into the new life. That's what my upcoming year is like.
Well, sounds like you got all your work cut out for you for 2015. Going on for me, though, right now I have got...
He's got his work cut out for about the next 18 years, for the very least.
Definitely. Yeah, I've just got the Nexus 6 still and the Nokia Lumia 830, and I actually got clearance from my AT&T rep to go ahead and keep the Nexus 6 for a couple more weeks, which I was very excited to get that news because I've been prepping for finals and exams and all that fun stuff that comes with junior year or high school. So it will be nice to have those devices to hold on to and put some more work into the reviews. I myself am actually taking off a day after Christmas to go to Anna Maria Islands in Florida for a week to spend some time with some family there. So taking both the Nexus 6 and the Lumia 830 with me to get some very nice shots there, which is going to be a bit better than the pretty much 24/7 clouds and just gloomy weather that has been in Lawrence, Michigan for the past few weeks. But kind of closing out 2014 has been a freaking awesome year for Mobile Cup of Joe. I was actually just checking our subscriber count, and we are officially over 2,500 subscribers. We're sitting at 2,507, which is just absolutely insane. And in regard to total video views, we're now at 524,255. So it's been a phenomenal year here for Mobile Cup of Joe. Saw a lot of changes. We got the live show. Tony went ahead and joined the crew for making videos on the channel regularly, and also Albie Rogers, who is not here. But then also having Chuck and Fred hosting the live show with us. and just an insane amount of stuff. A lot more content on the channel. We've been working really hard on getting the Google Plus page more active and being more present on that as well. And just being more present with the comments and everything on the YouTube videos. Our goal was 2,500 by Christmas, and looks like we hit that. And I will say that when we do reach 3,000 subscribers, I've got a couple things, a couple giveaways planned. But just thank you guys all if you're subscribing, if you've been with the channel for a couple years, since the beginning now, which was a little over 2 years, if you joined somewhere in the middle, or if you just subscribed today. Thank you so much for your continuous support, because that's why we go ahead and make these videos. We love talking about tech, but it's also fun to have your support there as well. Just commenting, watching, just thank you for sticking with us, and really looking forward to seeing where Mobile Cup of Joe does go in 2015. Because as exciting as all the stuff we talked about is, really insanely excited to see where the channel will be this time next year. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for your support. We will be taking a break for a couple weeks, at least next week for sure, with our What's Brewing, because our next show would normally be scheduled for the 26th, but most of us will be gone on vacation, and that's the day after Christmas, so we will be taking a break for that. But I think we may or may not still be good for the 2nd. I think we should be good if all our schedules do work around there. So for the time being, go ahead and plan for January 2nd for our normal time, taking a 1-week break. So everyone have a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, whatever you're celebrating for this next couple of weeks. Thank you again for your support. Have a Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and all that. And we'll see you guys all in 2015. Have a great night. See you guys.
Yes.
Thanks.